Well, welcome everybody to another segment of Lewis at Large. Yours truly, Warner Lewis from the Flight Deck, and as always, some smart talk radio is in your future, and this segment certainly no exception. I don't even know where to start with this one. She has been on this show before. She is a truly, I believe, a national music treasure. Her name is Kelley Hunt. You know that name. She has been in the music business, particularly in our area, for many, many years. She was born in Kansas City and was listened to great artists like Billie Holiday, Ray Charles, Ruth Brown, and numerous other ones, and over the years has put together an extraordinary music career, including numerous albums. She's appeared at least 6 times on the American Public Media's A Prairie Home Companion. She sold hundreds of thousands of independent units on her own label. Her latest work was in 2016 called Beautiful Bones, and a beautiful album it was indeed. She is preparing to go back into the studio. We'll talk about that and music in general. Kelley Hunt, how are you, my friend?
I'm doing really well, Warner. Thanks for asking.
Well, we're pleased to have you here. I did want to touch on, I want to talk about the career in the music business, but I want to talk about something a little bit more contemporary. You have just recently returned from a trip to Florida, an important trip indeed. Would you share with our listeners a little bit about that trip?
Oh, sure. We just got back from an event called A Day of Hope and Healing for the families and survivors of the Parkland, Florida, Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School shooting. And I was asked by one of the grief specialists to come and participate and sing during the day for that event. And they, unbeknownst to me, had used some of my music as part of the grief counseling process, which really was quite a surprise. So Al Berman, my husband and a business partner and manager, and I flew to Florida, and it was an all-day event which occurred on the 20th of May. And it was really an eye-opening, intense, beautiful experience, and I was honored to bring music to those folks.
That must have been quite an emotional, uplifting for you, and a wonderful sense of gratification that your material would be used, and yet also sobering at the same time.
It was very sobering, yeah. I mean, I was honored and kind of shocked to be asked, because I didn't know the folks personally, but the Bobby Rissimidi Healing Hearts Grief Center there, just a couple of miles from the high school, has been working with the whole community, including first responders, families, as you might imagine. What I didn't realize, because I've never been through something like that, a shooting like that, was how, and I should have realized this, how deeply it affects the entire community. People who were in the school, people who weren't in the school. So, we heard there were teachers there, there were some students there, the vice principal, she was the one that was there in the building when it happened. Police officers were there. We had really very enlightening conversations with them. And there were specialists from all over the country who came just to offer their services, including art therapists, the pets, healing pet services there, anything you can imagine, including yoga, drumming, music, and speakers from all over the country, just to uplift this community and to be the person that provided, that sang songs for this thing. It was pretty unbelievable, Werner, and I'm still processing it. We just got home yesterday. So.
Yeah, I'm sure. And again, thank you so much from all of us, especially those maybe not even aware of this trip and the work that you've done. I'm sure it was a very important part of that healing process. Well, let's dive into Kelley Hunt. Your work is well known, but for a quick review, you've got 6 releases out, planning a 7th, and I'm curious as to your evolution as an artist. From, if you look back, album number 1 through The Beautiful Bones. If I were to listen to that, if people were to listen to those, would they notice the growth of an artist, or do you see it more internally and just sort of smile with recognition of your growth?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, I'm a songwriter primarily, who happens to sing and perform my own songs, sing and play my own songs. So I feel like, from my perspective, the maturation of the songwriting from the first CD until the most current Beautiful Bones, I think it's discernible. I think it's something that I can really see quite a bit of growth in. But, I say that, but I also believe that happens for all of us. That first album came out in 1994. So if you look back on your career, or any of us look back, on our career, that many years ago. And what we're doing now, hopefully we'll all see a nice progression of experience, perspective, expertise, and growth on a personal and on a professional level. That's the way I see it at this point.
Again, I know you're comfortable in the studio and you're certainly comfortable on stage. I think, and I've said this to you before, and I would say it again to anyone here, I think you put on one of the greatest live shows and live performances that I have seen anywhere at any level. And there's lots of energy to it. And I've seen you do acoustic work. I've also seen you do some very hard rock and rhythm and blues stuff. And I'm curious as to, do you personally if you could only do one, would you pick one? What would you pick as the one venue, in the studio or live?
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh. Well, I think there's pros and cons to both. I think in the studio allows me to get my music out to more people in one fell swoop. If I don't record it, folks can't hear it all around the world. But there is something about the energy that I get from the people at the event from doing something live, whether it's in front of 50 people or 50,000 people. There is a give and take there with the people that are there to witness that and participate in it with me that I can't get anywhere else. It's not about, I don't need the applause or the adulation, but I really love the exchange of energy. It's a circular thing between me and the audience. I feel like we're not separated. So, honestly, I don't think I couldn't pick between the two. I got to have them both, Warner.
Okay. So you've been asked this 100 million times, so this is 100 million and one. But not only, quite frankly, from the perspective of a musician, which I think was something you enjoyed doing your entire life, but also that of a female. Who would have been some of your musical mentors growing up? And let me be a little bit more pointed with this. Not necessarily people that you listen to, not necessarily those, but those that you either work with directly, either in the music business or outside of the business, that had a decided effect on not only maybe your writing, but your perspective as a musician.
Well, I think there are three facets to it for me, 3 or 4 facets. One, as a piano player. Growing up, I was supported and really encouraged by my parents. I played by ear for many years and started young, and then they got me involved with a piano teacher named Mary Burke Norton, who encouraged not only my by ear playing, but also helped me learn to read music. That was really number one for me as a piano player. And then listening to all the other piano players over the years via my parents' record collection, and then last of all, being mentored for 11 years by Johnny Johnson, who it was his trio that Chuck Berry joined decades ago, and Johnny's known as the father of rock and roll piano. We crossed paths, and we became friends. His family and my family became friends, and he really was a wonderful piano mentor, and as a friend, just a human being, he exemplified what grace and compassion, steadfastness, looks like in a career that can be very hard to deal with. So as far as a piano player, those are the influences. As a singer, I really all began, honestly, with my mother. She, who is still alive, thank God, who sang really from her whole heart and her whole soul every time that woman opened her mouth to sing, whether it was standing in front of the sink when she washed dishes or whether it was in front of a big audience with a big band behind her. I've got to say, I just assumed everybody's mom sang that way and was comfortable with it. And my grandmother also sang as well. She sang pretty much only gospel music. So those two had everything to do with my early influences as a singer. I'm forever indebted. And as a songwriter, gosh, there are so many. I love to co-write. I love to write on my own. I'm compelled to write. I have to write, and even if I weren't doing it as a career, I would be sitting at my piano or have my guitar in my hand and be writing. And there's too many to list there. So.
Again, we are with local, I love these titles, singer-songwriter artist Kelley Hunt. She has 6 album releases to her credit, numerous, obviously, live performances. You can hear her work on radio. She's also been on Prairie Home Companion 6 or more times and is continuing her career and planning on heading back into the studio in the future here pretty soon. Well, let's talk specifically about songwriting. And I think a lot of people that listen to music wonder what was the inspiration for this song. And it could have been something as simple as a sandwich you ate in a restaurant to something as complicated as unrequited love. And I'm curious as to, if you look back again on your body of work, what is, I guess not necessarily the priority, but what many times comes first for you? The music or the lyrics? And if it's a 50-50, once you've got a set of lyrics, in your mind, does the music flow right away? Or sometimes we have a set of lyrics looking for just a piece of music to go to?
Well, I think for me it happens in almost every configuration you can imagine. There are times when I get a song title idea, or I hear something in passing, or I'm observing something out in the world, and the lyrics start to click. There are times, and I sit at the piano almost daily, or with my guitar in my hand, when I'm just kind of noodling around or I'm practicing, and suddenly a musical idea will hit. There hasn't really been one way or another that I preferred. I'm open to both. I do both. I actively write on a pretty regular basis, and I also allow time for inspired writing. Something pops into my head, but I don't count on that. I mean, I'm a pretty dedicated writer, songwriter. When I co-write, and I do co-write on a fairly regular basis, starting a few years ago, one of my favorite co-writers lives in Lawrence, Kansas, Karen Miriam Goldberg, who was the poet laureate for our state for 4 years, and a novelist and a teacher and an incredible poet and writer. We have a version of writing that we call just hold hands and jump off the cliff, or throw it on the wall and see what sticks. It's almost a stream of consciousness writing, both musically and lyrically, and that seems to also work really well for me. So the inspiration for songs comes from my personal life, although a lot of it's not. A lot of it is by observation of the world that we live in, people that we know. Some of it's fictionalized, but inspired by things that I've been through in my life. And the more life experience I have, the more I have to say, as all of us, I would assume.
What about, as you look around the music landscape today, you and I both were lucky. We grew up in an era of lots of new doors being opened, particularly in the rock and blues arena, and blues music was certainly built on by lots of modern-day artists. As you look around the landscape now, what's your prognostication, so to speak, for the future of the blues, particularly in the United States? Do you see young blues artists and young people embracing that, or are you seeing more of a different direction? And certainly, I have to admit, I'm going to editorialize here. When I watch the Grammys sometimes, I think, wow, all is lost. So much of that stuff feels pretty synthetic, and I don't mean to sound like an old guy talking, but it really does feel synthetic and not much from the heart.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that there are soulful artists all around us. They don't necessarily get the media attention and don't necessarily have the huge record company budgets behind them. What I've seen in traveling throughout the world is there is a deep and wide interest in the roots of different types of music, whether it be from rap artists that are sampling from, old soul music and R&B things. There's a lot of respect there for that. Or whether it be from a young player who's learning how to play slide guitar in the Delta blues tradition, and he or she has gone back to kind of investigate that. I think one of the things that comes to mind as you ask this question is, I think the artists throughout the world today feel things just as deeply as artists from the past. They have a different way to express themselves, mostly a different technology. So in many ways, they have more ways to express their ideas of the world and what they see around them and what they're experiencing. But I also see a longing for the hands-on, deep, live versions of songs where some artists are going back to releasing vinyl records. Some artists they find it novel to record to the 2-inch tape in the studio. They find it novel to have all the musicians in the studio at the same time to record a song. So that's new for them. So I see and sense a resurgence of the hands-on approach, also with folded in some of the new technology. So I'm actually very excited to see what comes next for a lot of the up-and-comers. And there are artists like myself who've been working for, a nice career so far, but who are nowhere near the finish line. It gives us an opportunity to be inspired by what's new, what's current, what new tools do we have, and also what works for me now as opposed to what worked for me 20 years ago. So take heart.
Yeah, okay. Well, I feel better now. What about life on the road? I know I'm sort of looking at some of the things you've got planned, and you're going to be at some songwriting workshops and a couple of other things. Looks like some interesting travel for you. It does not look like you're engaged in a big, long show tour, and I'm curious as to, at this point in your career, I know you love playing live, but do you enjoy the touring part of it, or is that just a sort of a necessary evil, and you like to kind of stay away from that when you can?
Well, I'm in the middle of a cycle right now where I am getting ready to go into the studio, and there are blocks of time set aside for me to do that. And once a new record comes out, I think just like with most artists that I know that are have active careers, when you have a new recording or a set of recordings coming out, a lot of that following months and following years touring is set around that to help promote and introduce people to the next thing that you're doing.
Right.
So that will be happening for me as well.
Right.
So I love the aspect of introducing new music, coming back to places, and being out. I've got an incredible band that is based out of Chicago now, and that tours with me. So, no, I look forward to it. I think there's a difference between early, back in the day kind of touring where you just had to take everything that came along, you beat yourself to death, you went broke doing it, and it was brutal and physically demanding, as opposed to, you've had some records out, you've toured, all over the world, and there are people that are ready to see you again and wanting to hear what's next, what's new. So, and I think one of the reasons I've been able to do that over the years is because Al, who takes care of the business side of what I do, has opened so many doors for me, introducing me to fans, getting me in front of producers, festivals. He really is a key to my being able to still do what I love to do. Otherwise, it probably wouldn't be happening.
Well, again, Beautiful Bones, released in 2016, was your most recent release. Again, you haven't even gone into the studio yet, but share with us a little bit, maybe some thought process or a tone or some texture possibly of what this new release might feel like.
Well, right now we're in the process of determining and throwing out creative ideas about really just the tenor of the piece as a whole. And there are songs that are being considered for this next record that I've already been doing live, both with my touring band and on my own, out in the world, because one of my processes, and it's been consistent for me really over the years, Warner, is I like to road test things that I'm writing or have written or co-written in a live setting to really get the energy and the feel for it and to get the visceral reaction from various audiences about it. It's not about, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work because the audience didn't like it. It's about, is this what I want to say? Is this how I want to say it? Does this feel like a next step for me? And so because every record takes place at a different point in time, there are things that have happened in our world to others and to myself that not dictate, but that influence the material that gets chosen to be put together as a body of work. And we really look at it as a body of work for that moment in time for me. So that's the process we're in right now. And I am playing several of those songs out in the world right now that are strongly being considered for the record. And it influences how we produce it, where we record it, who we bring in, what musicians we bring in. And it's an exciting, thoughtful time right before I go into a studio. And I never know what's going to happen in that studio. I can plan all I want to, and we can have. It happened on A Beautiful Bones. We got in that studio. It was an amazing time, and I ended up finishing a song while I was there that we recorded, and I recorded more than we needed for the record, which I almost always do, and then we see what fits together with the concept that we went in with, and that's all starting to gel right now.
Well, it's still the first half of 2018. What I know you probably don't have an exact date, but when are you looking to try to release this?
Well, we're hoping to have it finished and out into the world sometime later in the year, before the year's over. And we'll keep people posted about that. Once I do go into the studio and give folks kind of a behind-the-scenes look and give them an idea, then once the release date is picked and we have the team together to roll the record out, we're hoping that'll be before the end of the year.
Well, she is one of the most powerful live acts I have ever seen. I would recommend anyone to go see her when they get an opportunity. Kelley Hunt and her band, and soon to be working on album number 7. We'll look forward to that. As we close out here, we'll listen to a track from Beautiful Bones to wrap things up. And Kelley, before we do, though, thank you so much for spending time. I know you've been very busy, and thanks for sharing the story about Florida and some observations on your career. And as always, I'd love to have you back, especially maybe when the new album gets released.
That'd be great, Warren. Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Hey, real quickly, also, do you have a website?
Yes, Kelley Hunt is KELLEYHUNT.com, and you can find me on Facebook, Kelley Hunt Music, and on Twitter, Kelley Hunt Music, and Instagram, Kelley Hunt Music.
Great. Well, listen, we will be back with more right after this on Lewis at Large.
I'm feeling about today. Don't know what's gonna happen. Don't know why I feel this way. I don't know all the details, but I don't need to know. I got a good feeling about today. But they worry who's in my bedroom. They'll make a law, it might be a sin. About today, alright. I can't put my finger on it. Don't know why I feel this way. Oh, but I can't help but thinking everything is gonna be okay. I have got a good feeling. You know I got a real good feeling. I got a good about today, yeah. And everything is gonna be okay, alright. When I woke up this morning, I made up my mind.
You're out of town or away from home. What to do about your pet? Call Call of Duty. They're pet waste removal experts, and they now provide drop-in pet visits to feed, water, walk, play, give meds, clean a litter box, or take your pet on a potty break. It's perfect for pet owners wanting their pet to get some attention while they're away from home. Contact Call of Duty at 764-7224. That's 764-7224. Or visit their website, callofdutypetwasteremoval.com.